Hello, everyone. My name is David, and I am an English teacher. But today, I want to share something different with you. I want to tell you my story, not as a teacher, but as a learner, just like you. You see, I wasn't always an English expert. In fact, I started just like many of you, struggling with simple words and feeling lost when someone spoke English quickly. Growing up, I didn't speak English at home. It wasn't a language I was comfortable with. I remember the first time I tried to speak English in front of others. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, and my words were all mixed up. I felt embarrassed and thought maybe English wasn't for me. But deep down, I had a dream. I wanted to speak English fluently, travel the world, and one day help others learn this beautiful language. I wanted to be able to stand in front of a class and teach with confidence. I still remember my first day in an English class. I was so excited, but at the same time, I felt scared. Everyone around me seemed so much better. Some could speak clearly, others knew many words, and I felt like I was behind. But I knew I had to start somewhere. I knew this was just the beginning of a long journey. At first, my progress was slow. There were days when I felt like giving up. I would think, why am I doing this? It's too hard. But every time I felt like that, I remembered my dream. I remembered how much I wanted to be able to communicate with people from all over the world, to teach and inspire others, and to show them that if I could do it, so could they. This is where my story began. A journey from not knowing much English to becoming an expert English teacher. Along the way, I faced many challenges, made countless mistakes, and learned so much. I want to share my journey with you, not just as a story, but as a guide. I hope that by hearing my experiences, you'll feel motivated to keep going, no matter how hard it feels right now. So, let's dive into my journey. I will take you through every step, from the struggles I faced to the strategies that worked for me. I will tell you about the mistakes I made and how I corrected them, and along the way I'll share some tips that helped me become a fluent English speaker and a confident teacher. Remember, every expert was once a beginner, and just like you, I started from zero. But with patience, hard work, and the right methods, I turned my dream into reality. I hope my story inspires you to do the same. After deciding to learn English, I knew I had to start somewhere. But the big question was, where do I begin? I didn't have much guidance back then, and English seemed like a huge mountain that I didn't know how to climb. I started with what I had, a small dictionary, a few basic English books, and a lot of determination. In the beginning, I focused on learning simple words and phrases. I would carry my little dictionary everywhere, and whenever I had a free moment, I would open it and try to learn new words. At first, it felt like every word was strange and hard to remember. I would repeat them to myself over and over again, but the next day, I would forget. It was frustrating. I felt like I was moving forward one step and then falling back two. But I didn't give up. I realized that learning a language is not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. Every day, I made it a habit to learn just 5 new words. 5 words didn't seem like much, but over time, Those words added up. I also started reading simple English storybooks, especially children's books. They were easy to understand and helped me connect words with pictures, making learning more enjoyable. Listening was another challenge. I would try to watch English movies, but most of the time I couldn't keep up. The characters spoke so fast and I felt lost. I decided to start with something simpler, English songs. I remember sitting in my room, playing songs with lyrics on my phone and trying to sing along. I would repeat the same song over and over until I could understand and pronounce every word. It wasn't easy, but it was fun, and it helped me get used to the sound of English. The most important thing I did was to practice speaking. At first, I was too shy to speak English in front of others. I was afraid they would laugh at my mistakes. So I started practicing by talking to myself. I would stand in front of the mirror and pretend to have a conversation. I would describe my day, talk about what I liked, or just say random sentences. It felt silly at times, but it helped me build confidence in speaking. I also joined a local English club where people would gather to practice speaking. It was intimidating at first because I was surrounded by people who spoke better than me. But I realized that I wasn't alone. Everyone was there to learn. The first time I spoke in the group, my voice was shaky and my sentences were full of errors. But no one judged me. Instead, they encouraged me to keep going. Slowly, my confidence grew, and speaking became less scary. These small steps marked the beginning of my journey. They weren't perfect, but they were mine. Every new word I learned, every sentence I spoke, and every mistake I made brought me closer to my goal. It was a slow process, but with each step, I could feel myself improving bit by bit. As I continued my journey, I began to realize that learning English wasn't just about memorizing words or repeating sentences. It was about understanding, practicing, and being brave enough to make mistakes. But of course, challenges were always there, waiting at every corner. One of the biggest challenges I faced was pronunciation. I remember feeling frustrated when I tried to say words, but they never sounded right. Sometimes people couldn't understand what I was trying to say, and it made me feel embarrassed. I started to avoid speaking in public because I was afraid of making mistakes and being laughed at. But I knew I couldn't hide forever if I wanted to improve. To tackle my pronunciation, I started watching videos of native speakers on YouTube. I would listen carefully to how they pronounced each word and tried to copy them exactly. I practiced in front of the mirror, paying attention to how my mouth moved, and repeated words until they sounded better. It was a slow process, but I noticed small improvements every day. Another major struggle was grammar. I found English grammar confusing with all its rules and exceptions. Sometimes I would write or say something that sounded correct to me, but it was wrong. I often mixed up tenses, used the wrong prepositions, and didn't understand why certain sentences worked while others didn't. I made a lot of mistakes, and each one felt like a setback. Instead of getting discouraged, I turned my mistakes into learning opportunities. I kept a notebook where I wrote down every error I made and the correct version of it. I studied my mistakes and tried not to repeat them. I also asked for feedback whenever possible, even if it was hard to hear. Little by little, I started to understand the patterns of the language, and my grammar improved. But the biggest challenge was staying motivated. There were days when I felt stuck, like I wasn't making any progress. I would compare myself to others who spoke fluently, and I felt small. There were moments when I thought about giving up, thinking maybe I would never reach the level I wanted. But whenever I felt that way, I reminded myself why I started. I remembered my dream of becoming an English teacher and inspiring others. That dream kept me going, even on the hardest days. I also realized the importance of surrounding myself with positive influences. I started following English learning communities online, where people shared their experiences, struggles, and success stories. Seeing others who were going through the same challenges gave me strength. I learned that every learner faces ups and downs, and it's okay to have bad days as long as you keep moving forward. Mistakes were a big part of my journey, but they were also my greatest teachers. Each mistake taught me something new and brought me closer to my goal. I learned that it's okay not to be perfect, that errors are just stepping stones on the path to success. As I continued learning, I knew I needed to find the right strategies to make real progress. It wasn't enough just to memorize words or study grammar rules. I needed to find ways that worked for me, ways that made learning English feel natural and enjoyable. In this chapter, I'll share the methods and strategies that helped me turn my struggles into success. Immersing myself in English. One of the most effective strategies I discovered was immersion. I realized that the more I surrounded myself with English, the faster I learned. I started to incorporate English into my daily life in simple ways. I changed the language on my phone and computer to English, watched English TV shows with subtitles, and listened to English podcasts while doing chores. This constant exposure helped me get used to the language, even when I wasn't actively studying. Reading was also a big part of my immersion strategy. I began with simple materials like children's books and short stories, gradually moving on to newspapers and articles. I didn't worry about understanding every word. Instead, I focused on getting the main idea. Over time, my vocabulary grew, and reading became less of a chore and more of a habit. Speaking without fear. One of my biggest breakthroughs came when I stopped being afraid of speaking. I realized that perfection was not the goal, communication was. I started looking for every opportunity to speak English, no matter how small. I joined language exchange groups where I could practice with other learners, and I even started talking to myself out loud at home, narrating my day or practicing conversations. A strategy that helped me a lot was recording myself speaking. I would pick a topic, record a short speech, and then listen to it. At first, it was hard to hear my mistakes, but it was a great way to track my progress. I could see how my pronunciation, fluency, and confidence improved over time. Learning through mistakes. One of the most valuable lessons I learned was that mistakes are a natural part of learning. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I started to see each mistake as an opportunity to improve. I kept a mistake journal where I noted down errors I made while speaking or writing and corrected them. This simple habit helped me avoid repeating the same mistakes and improved my language skills faster than anything else. Practicing daily, even in small amounts. Consistency was key to my progress. I made a promise to myself to practice English every day, even if it was just for 10 or 15 minutes. On busy days, I would review vocabulary or listen to a short podcast. On other days, I would spend an hour reading, writing, or practicing speaking. This daily commitment kept me connected to the language and ensured I was always moving forward. Setting clear goals. Another important strategy was setting clear, achievable goals. Instead of saying, "I want to be fluent in English," I broke my goal down into smaller, more specific targets. I aim to learn 10 new words a week, read 1 article a day, or hold a 5-minute conversation without pausing. Each small goal gave me a sense of achievement and kept me motivated. Finding a learning community. Connecting with others made a huge difference in my journey. I found online groups and forums where learners shared tips, resources, and encouragement. Being part of a community helped me realize I wasn't alone, and it gave me a platform to practice and learn from others' experiences. I also made friends who were learning English, and we would practice together, share our challenges, and celebrate our progress. These strategies were not magic tricks. They required patience, consistency, and a willingness to keep going even when things got tough. But they worked for me, and they helped me turn my dream of speaking English fluently into reality. Looking back on my journey, I realized there were many things I could have done differently to make learning English easier and more enjoyable. In this chapter, I want to share some tips and advice that I wish I had known when I first started. These are simple, practical strategies that can help any English learner stay on track and make real progress. Don't aim for perfection. Aim for progress. One of the biggest mistakes I made at the beginning was trying to be perfect. I was scared of making mistakes, which often held me back from speaking or writing in English. But I learned that perfection is not the goal, communication is. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are an important part of learning. Focus on progress, not perfection. Celebrate the small wins, like learning a new word or completing a conversation, and keep pushing forward. Practice speaking from day one. Many learners, including myself, wait too long before they start speaking English. We feel like we need to learn more words or master grammar before we can speak. But the truth is, speaking is the most important part of learning a language. Don't be afraid to start speaking from day one, even if it's just with yourself or with a language partner. The more you speak, the more confident you will become, and your fluency will improve faster than you think. Find learning methods that you enjoy. Learning English doesn't have to be boring. Find ways to make it fun and enjoyable. If you love music, listen to English songs and try to sing along. If you enjoy reading, pick up English books or articles about topics you like. If you're into movies, watch English films with subtitles. The key is to find methods that you enjoy so that learning feels less like a task and more like a part of your daily life. Consistency is more important than intensity. It's better to study for 15 minutes every day than to study for 2 hours once a week. Consistency is the key to mastering any skill, including English. Set a small amount of time each day to practice, whether it's reviewing vocabulary, listening to a podcast, or practicing speaking. The important thing is to make English a daily habit, no matter how busy you are. Surround yourself with English. Immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Change your phone and social media settings to English. Read English signs. Listen to English radio, and try to think in English. The more you surround yourself with the language, the more naturally it will come to you. It's like living in an English-speaking country without leaving your home. Use technology to your advantage. We live in a time where learning resources are more accessible than ever. Use apps, websites, and online courses to improve your skills. Apps like Duolingo, Memrise, and Anki can help you build vocabulary. Websites like YouTube offer endless videos for listening practice, and there are plenty of free resources to help with grammar, writing, and speaking. Take advantage of these tools to supplement your learning. Find a language partner or community. Practicing with others can make a big difference. Find a language partner or join a community where you can practice speaking and share experiences. It doesn't matter if your partner is also a learner. What's important is practicing together. You'll help each other improve, and it's always motivating to have someone to share your progress with. Be patient and kind to yourself. Learning English is a journey, and like any journey, it takes time. There will be days when you feel like you're not making progress, and that's okay. Be patient with yourself and remember that every step forward, no matter how small, is a step towards your goal. Celebrate your achievements and don't be too hard on yourself when things don't go perfectly. These are the tips that helped me the most on my journey from a beginner to an English expert. Remember, everyone's learning path is different, so find what works best for you and stick with it. The most important thing is to never stop learning and to enjoy the process along the way. After years of learning, struggling, and growing, I reached a point where I felt confident in my English skills. But my journey didn't end there. In fact, it was just the beginning of something new, becoming an English teacher. In this chapter, I'll share how my experiences shaped me into the teacher I am today, and how I now use my journey to help and inspire others. The decision to teach. When I started learning English, I never imagined that one day I would be teaching it to others. My initial goal was simply to speak fluently, to communicate confidently in any situation. But as my skills improved, I found myself helping friends and classmates with their English, explaining things in simple ways that made sense to them. I realized that teaching was something I enjoyed, and that my own struggles gave me a unique perspective. Teaching became a natural next step. I knew what it felt like to be frustrated, to make mistakes, and to feel like giving up. I wanted to use my experience to guide others through those same challenges. I decided to get formal training, learning about teaching methods and how to design lessons that are effective and engaging. With each lesson, I learned something new, not just about English, but about how to connect with students and make learning enjoyable. Using my own experience to teach. One of the most rewarding parts of being a teacher is sharing my own story. I often tell my students about my early struggles, how I used to be afraid to speak, and how I made countless mistakes along the way. I remind them that learning a language is not a straight line. It's a journey full of ups and downs. My story helps them see that they are not alone, and if I could do it, they can too. I incorporate the strategies that worked for me into my teaching. I encourage my students to immerse themselves in English, to practice speaking every day, and to embrace their mistakes as learning opportunities. I also make my lessons interactive and fun, using games, role plays, and real-life scenarios to make learning feel less like a classroom and more like real-life practice. The challenges of teaching. Teaching is not without its challenges. Every student is different, and what works for one person might not work for another. Some students struggle with pronunciation, while others find it hard to understand grammar. I've learned to be patient and adaptable, finding different ways to explain concepts and always encouraging my students to keep going, no matter how hard it seems. One of the biggest challenges is helping students overcome their fear of speaking. Many of them, like me, worry about making mistakes or sounding silly. I always tell them that the fear will never completely go away, but the more they speak, the quieter that fear will become. I create a supportive environment where mistakes are seen as a normal part of the learning process, and every attempt at speaking is celebrated. Seeing students succeed. There's nothing more fulfilling than seeing my students succeed. Watching someone go from being too shy to speak to confidently holding a conversation is the best reward. It reminds me of why I started this journey in the first place and why I continue to teach. Every student's success feels like my own, and it's a reminder that learning English is more than just mastering a language. It's about building confidence, opening doors, and connecting with the world. Continuing to learn and grow. Even as a teacher, my learning never stops. I continue to study, read, and practice English to keep my skills sharp and to be the best teacher I can be. I also learn from my students. Their questions and insights often challenge me to think differently and to find better ways to explain things. Teaching is a two-way street, and I am constantly growing just as my students are. My message to new learners. If there's one message I want to leave with my students and anyone learning English, it's this: don't give up. Learning a language takes time, effort, and patience, but the rewards are worth it. Every new word you learn, every conversation you have, and every step you take is progress. Remember that it's okay to struggle, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to feel frustrated. What's important is to keep going, keep learning, and keep believing in yourself. Becoming an English teacher has been one of the most rewarding parts of my journey. I am grateful for the opportunity to share my story, help others, and watch new learners find their own paths to success. If you're just starting out or are somewhere in the middle of your English journey, know that you have the potential to achieve your goals. Stay consistent, stay motivated, and remember, you're never alone on this path.